Welcome to MedEvidence, Truth Behind the Data. I'm Michelle McCormick. Today, we're with Michael Koren, Dr. Michael Koren and Dr. Stephen Toenjes. We are talking about Alzheimer's disease and now the Hullabaloos of Aduhelm. But first, Dr. Michael Koren is a practicing cardiologist and CEO and founder of Encore Research Group. He has been principal investigator of multiple trials and has been published in the most prestigious journals. Dr. Stephen Toenjes is a board-certified neurologist and principal investigator on multiple trials at Encore Research Group. He is a decorated Navy veteran and has been practicing neurology in Jacksonville for over 10 years. Gentlemen, quite great conversation we've been having today, if I remember correctly. I think we've really talked a lot about...
we had a conversation today?
We've had a good conversation today about that. But now... treatments or research, trials. Dr. Koren, tell us a little bit about Aduhelm.
Sure. Well, I'll just start by mentioning the fact that we both, Dr. Toenjes and I, work at Jacksonville Center for Clinical Research. This is a group of physicians. It's a physician-based group that runs clinical trials outside of our practices. And we have about 100 doctors in the area that participate, and we are doing studies in many different areas. My concentration would be cardiovascular. I got very involved, of course, in the COVID-19 vaccine studies because of my expertise in running clinical trials. But Dr. Toenjes has been instrumental and has done great work for us in Alzheimer's, in migraine headache, and some other areas. We're about to get some Parkinson's stuff up and going, so we're excited about that. So we've, fortunately, this physician group has developed a reputation internationally now as doing some really good work in testing all these things. As both Dr. Toenjes and I will attest to, it's great to talk about the theoretical elements of what should and should not work, but at the end of the day, what happens in clinical trials tells us what in fact does work. And we're never as smart as we think we are. So we have to run the clinical trials to really see whether or not our brilliant hypotheses turn out to be actually true. And so that's a neat thing that we do every day. And patients, typically really enjoy the process and learn from the process and get very tangible benefits from the process in many cases.
Well, and they get to be a part of it too. So they feel like they're giving back and doing something to move medicine forward.
Yeah, and so in medicine, there are areas that make great progress fairly quickly. So Dr. Toenjes mentioned statins, and we've had discussions on this program about some of the amazing breakthroughs in lipid treatment. And they've made a huge difference. And just to remind everybody, cardiovascular death rates dropped in the U.S. by 60% between 1980 and 2010.
That's huge.
And that was due to the fact that we had this great research, and largely due to preventative cardiovascular therapies that became prevalent. Dr. Toenjes has been part of migraine studies, and we're doing a great job in migraine compared to some other areas. But Alzheimer's has been a toughie. It's been a tough area, and a lot of companies have spent a lot of money doing research in this area with a lot of not great results. And recently, it was a company called Biogen that developed a monoclonal antibody to try to prevent the development of amyloid plaques that had pretty mixed results. And there was a bit of a controversy about FDA approval of it. And I'll hand it off to Dr. Toenjes to give us a little bit more insight into this particular product and the current controversy.
Sure. Thank you. So Aducanumab or Aduhelm is an FDA-approved therapy, putatively a disease-modifying therapy for Alzheimer's disease. It's the first Alzheimer's disease drug to gain any type of FDA approval for a long time, I think since 2003. There are some controversies that surround it. What Aduhelm is an antibody that very specifically identifies pathological beta amyloid. And through the years of study with the drug, clearly does remove beta amyloid from brain tissue. I think that's something that can clearly be concluded from the available evidence. The controversy comes in when we try to determine, is there clear and convincing clinical evidence? Do we actually see the outcomes? that we want to see. And there were a couple of large studies that were done, and historically we want at least a couple of separate, well-done, randomized, placebo-controlled trials with corroborating results. And one of Biogen's trials, there did appear to be some potentially meaningful clinical efficacy, and in the other trial, there was not. And therein lies the controversy. Now, when we dive into controversy, everyone starts to express their opinions, and the bottom line is that you just have to look at the data, and the science isn't controversial. The interpretation of it is what's controversial.
How long are the trials?
They are generally trials that are going to go on for a year or longer.
Okay.
So I'll give you just a little research insight, a little tidbit, how you know that this is a monoclonal antibody. When you say Aducanumab, it ends with the letters MAB, which is monoclonal antibody.
Yeah.
So if you want to impress your friends and look at the generic name of a drug and determine if it's an antibody or not, just look to see if it ends with MAB. And then for the advanced class, if it ends with UMAB, it's a human monoclonal antibody. So if you really want to impress your friends, say not only is that a monoclonal antibody, but it's a human monoclonal antibody.
Well, and I think the word monoclonal antibody was kind of like a buzzword that we've had with COVID as a treatment. And that's the first time I really ever heard of that term. So I appreciate the explanation on when something ends in an MAB. Totally makes sense to me. But it makes sense that this is what you're using for your trials.
Right. And the beauty of monoclonal antibodies is they can be developed to specifically target a protein. So they're not going to hit random things. They're going to just hit one thing. And so when we use small molecules like pills, they can have what we call off-target effects. They can go into different tissues. They can do different things that may not be what's intended. But for monoclonal antibody, they're designed just to hit one thing.
So they will go through the system and just attack that one thing. It's like it has like a laser focus on
Exactly.
where it's going.
There's only one thing that's going to fit into the monoclonal antibody.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a very, very specific key.
And that's exactly what Aducanumab is. And there are other antibodies in clinical trials in large phase 3 stages for other amyloid based antibodies. And I think that it's helpful for people who are either have loved ones or are themselves living with the disease of Alzheimer's. This is the controversies here really hit home, and it's not a question of whether we can remove beta amyloid out of the brains of humans with Alzheimer's. We can do that. A number of the antibodies have been demonstrated to clearly do that. The question is how exactly do we do that? At what stage of the disease should we be doing that? How safe is doing that? And does that translate into actually slowing down the course of disease? There are major controversies about whether what was seen, particularly in Biogen studies, were those clinically relevant. The whole science of trying to evaluate someone's cognition and then evaluate how it changes is in itself difficult and I would say controversial. When we do a trial, there is going to be an identified primary endpoint. You're going to predefine, this is what we're trying to define an effect on. And in their trials, it was something called the ADS cog sum of boxes. We don't need to talk about exactly what that means, but it's just a way to assess cognition and function. And the ADS cog sum of boxes in and of itself has some subjective interpretation to it, and therein lies some potential controversy. The reviewers in the medical literature that you'll read describe the aducanumab studies, even if you assume that the level of effect on ADAS-Cog sum of boxes was actually there. That's not really what we deem a clinically relevant outcome anyway. That in itself is also a controversial opinion. That would be an opinion who would be arguing against the approval for Aducanumab for the general public.
I'm sorry, just to jump in also, is the other part of the controversy is really the role of the FDA.
Correct. That's where I was going to go with it, because you mentioned the FDA and COVID, and it has been very interesting to see how COVID has influenced the general public's understanding of what happens at the FDA. Mm-hmm. They understand phase 3 trial. They understand safety and efficacy as main focuses, and so I that is a real plus of something like our learning experience through COVID. Unfortunately, when things are within a governmental realm, they are also potentially influenced by controversial behaviors. And so that is the unfortunate part of some of the controversy with Aducanumab, because patients that I see and their loved ones that I see in clinic, when you start talking about the potential risks of a medication like Aducanumab, which are very real, if there is some uncertainty with regard to our society's watchdog, which is the FDA, that really pulls the rug out from underneath your ability to treat patients. Mm-hmm. So the controversy is unfortunate, but we're just going to have to deal with it and move forward.
Yeah. So some people think that the FDA role should be to make sure that stuff is basically safe, and the FDA shouldn't get that much involved in terms of determining how good the drug is. Mm-hmm. And so in this particular case, this drug, everybody agrees is, it's okay. There's some potential benefits if you look at it the right way. You get the right light at the right angle, and the data look okay. So it's not something that blows your mind in terms of how efficacious it is, like the COVID-19 vaccines, which was clear cut. On the other hand, the FDA determined that this basic safety was good. There's potential side effects, but typically the basic safety of monoclonal antibodies is good because they're very, very specific to the target, and they don't do a whole lot outside of hitting the target. So that was the FDA opinion. And in this particular case, the FDA went out of their way to say that Alzheimer's research has been so difficult that part of the reason we're approving this is so that the manufacturer can get some money to do further research. Because if you keep on trying to do research and you never get a drug on the market, you'll never have a return on the investment, and there'll never be a reason to do more studies. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a big part of the controversy. They say, well, that's not the FDA's role to try to support the drug companies. The FDA should be just giving us the facts, and they can even decide to approve something, but just say, well, it's not that great, but it probably doesn't kill you, that sort of thing. And in this case, they went out of their way to say that they were approving it because they wanted to encourage further drug development in this area, and they wanted to be an income source. And then this falls on the payers, and the payers have to say, okay, well, basically the FDA is saying, no, this isn't a great drug, but they still want us to pay these outrageous sums. How much is this drug?
Well, when it initially was approved, the price tag was $56,000, and then that's the administration of the drug. Wow. There are other costs.
Yeah.
But is that covered by Medicare?
Well, we talk about that. Right. If it's not $56,000, Biogen did some recalculations, and they lowered the price. I think to $55.50.
Oh, okay.
No, they lowered it to
half. All right.
There are sophisticated means by which we do calculations on how much a drug is worth. And those estimates were more around $3,000-$4,000 per person, and after the backlash and publications like what I just alluded to, Biogen did lower the price of the drug, and they chopped it in half. They put it in half, and so it is approved. It is the initial statements from Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is that the drug will be covered with a big caveat. Patients have to be in a qualifying study. While many people would still consider the therapeutic, quote unquote, experimental. It will be covered if a person's in a qualifying study.
I was going to say you probably had to check a lot of boxes.
And we have to understand it's FDA approved to reduce the load of beta amyloid in the brain of a patient with Alzheimer's. It's not FDA approved to alter the clinical course of Alzheimer's. And so you have to look at the fine print of exactly what the FDA said. What does this do? And it does do what the FDA said it does.
So the take-home message for the audience is that if you forget your keys, you better save your money.